welcome to Operation 8-Bit. I'm your host, Tony Landy, and over there behind the camera, we have Sparky making sarcastic comments. For those of you that are new to our channel, keep an eye out for those. They're going to pop up from time to time during the video, and they're going to look something like this. Why do I let you do that? Anyway, over a year ago, we uploaded our very first video to YouTube. And that episode was on how to add games to the Atari Flashback 9. I decided for our 1-year anniversary that it would be fun to do a review of the Atari Flashback X and show you how we can load games onto this one. So what do you say we start off by getting this thing out of the box and taking a look at it? AtGames released the Atari Flashback X in 2019. And as of right now, it's the last console of that particular series. Opening the box, the first big difference we can see is how this looks compared to the previous models. With the X, AtGames was really trying to capitalize on the mini console trend. And this is a near perfect replica of an actual Atari 2600. It even comes with a fake cartridge port. Look at those switches. They're just like the original and so much nicer than these big ugly orange buttons that have been on all the previous versions since the Flashback 2. Now, I do want to point out that there are only 5 switches. As we know, the original Atari VCS had 6 on the front. And someplace around 1980, 1981, Atari was trying to cut costs, so they moved the left-right difficulty selectors to the back, leaving just 4 switches on the front. The one that's missing here is the TV type switch. That's the one that lets you flip between color and black and white. On the back of the unit, we have ports for the controllers, a USB jack for power, and an HDMI output. Like the 9, this model outputs in 720p resolution. In the box, we also got a power adapter and these 2 joysticks. One control has these set of buttons that let you access game features of the console, like loading or saving a game in progress, and there's even a rewind feature that lets you pick up right before you make a mistake and die. Now, I don't like the joysticks that came with this. They're way too loose and they feel cheaply made. I get the feeling the shaft is going to snap off in my hand if I start pulling on it too much. Another thing, this console comes loaded with paddle games, but they didn't bother to include a set of paddles. The instructions even call this out, and they go on to say that trying to play those games with a joystick is gonna suck. Well, I guess that's a good segue. Let's get this thing hooked up to my video capture card, and why don't we take a look at some of the games? Obviously, with over 100 games on this thing, we're not gonna play them all in this video, unless that's something you want us to do. Or better yet, we can have Sparky do it. Okay. If you want us to do a video where Sparky has to play every game that came on this console, leave a comment below. We'll even set it up so he has a hot mic so we can get his reactions in real time. There's not that many differences between the 9 and the X when it comes to the games list, with a few notable exceptions. Most of the games that were dropped, like Fun with Numbers and Backgammon, were pretty lame. So there's not a big loss there, especially when you see the games that they were replaced with. In their place, we now have games like Space Raid, Lock and Chase, and Burger Time, which were all previously bonus games on the 9 Gold Edition. They also included the original 1982 version of Super Cobra from Parker Brothers. This is the first time this game has ever been included on any of the Atari Flashback consoles, so it's a welcome addition to the lineup. The paddle games work fine, but it is a bit annoying to get them running. I had to use the joystick with the extra control buttons to select the game I wanted to play, and then switch out to the stock paddle controllers after it was loaded. The controls seem a little jerky, but I'm not sure if that's because of the emulator, or if I just need to clean the potentiometer on these things. A big difference on the Flashback X is the bonus games that they included on the Deluxe Special Edition. In all of the previous versions, the Gold or Deluxe editions added some pretty good titles to the lineup. A good example of this is the Flashback 9 Gold included Pitfall 2 from Activision. But with the Flashback X Deluxe Special Edition, we just get the shit titles they dropped from the main lineup of the 9. So, unless your plan is to torture your kids with a crappy math flashcard game from the 1970s, there's really no value add here. Now, since my kids are all grown up, and I missed the opportunity to torment them with Atari 2600 educational games, I think we should just move on and add some better titles to this thing. For this upgrade, we'll need a Phillips head screwdriver, a USB flash drive, an OTG adapter cable, and a micro USB cable. It also helps if you have a good stiff drink. I'll make sure to leave links in the description for all of the parts and documentation you need. The first thing we need to do is head over to the AtGames website and over to the firmware update portal. Just a heads up, you do need to register with the site before you can download the files. Since I'm already registered, I just needed to log in. From the downloads page, you can see all of the different game systems that AtGames offers. Scroll until you find your model, and then go ahead and download the firmware for that system. You can also use the support link to download the full set of instructions on how to do this update. I would suggest grabbing this and having it handy for later. Now, this is really very important. Make sure to pick the right version for your system. If you don't, you can seriously bork everything up and brick the console. We're also going to need to download the Arcade Dev Toolkit and another tool called Driver Assistant. Let's start by jumping over to the Driver Assistant folder. Double-click on the install, and as the name implies, this is going to add the driver that will let your PC communicate with the Rock Chip SoC that's powering the flashback. Next thing we need to do is open up the case by removing the 4 screws holding it together. With those out, we want to gently remove the top of the case. There's a ribbon cable inside of here that you don't want to mess with. So the best way to do this is to lift the top from the side with the switches and then carefully flip it over like so. With the unit open, I'm going to connect it to my computer with the micro USB cable. And back over on my PC, I'm going to start up Android Tools. The reason we need to open the case is so that we could get to this little recovery button on the PCB. I need to hold this button down while I power on the system. And I hold that and I can let it go as soon as the app says found one loader device in the status bar. Now we just go to the Upgrade Firmware tab, click the Firmware button, select the firmware file that we downloaded from AtGames, and then click the Upgrade button. Once we get this Reset Device Success message, we can power off the Atari, disconnect it from the computer, and put it all back together. Now with that done, let's go and pick out some games. First, make sure that the USB drive you're going to use is formatted to FAT32. Once that's done, we need to create a folder called Game in the root. This is case sensitive, so make sure you create the folder exactly like I've entered it here with a capital G. Next, let's copy over some games. I've already got these selected in a folder, so I'm just going to drag and drop them in onto the USB drive. The flashback won't recognize any files that have spaces in the names. So what I've done is to just rename them and replace the spaces with underscores and dashes. Now, I have seen other people say that you can only load files with the .A26 extension. But this wasn't a problem on the Flashback 9, and it's not a problem on this one either. Files with the .bin extension work just fine. With the games on the flash drive, all we need to do is connect the OTG cable to the console. We'll plug the micro USB end in here, connect the power to this port here on the adapter, and then plug the USB drive into this slot here. Alright, so let's reconnect this back to the HDMI capture card and see if it worked. With the system rebooted, you can see we have an extra menu option now called External USB Drive. And if we navigate over to that, there are all the games we just loaded. So, this all worked. Why don't we go ahead and play some games and have some fun? So, just like in last year's video, let's start out with the original arcade port of Pac-Man. Yep, it's still awful. And this joystick makes it even worse. Okay, unless we do a video on Atari arcade ports that really suck, I'm not playing this game ever again. This homebrew version of Pac-Man is so much better. And I still don't understand why AtGames only had this available on the Flashback portables and never put it on the Flashback consoles. It has to be some BS licensing issue. One game that I wanted to show running on this was Super Cobra Arcade from the guys over at Atari Age. Like so many other homebrew games that have been released for the Atari over the past few years, this one is really a lot closer to the original arcade version. But, as I expected, it chokes on the Flashback X because the version of Stella that they use on this is too old. You need to at least have V5 or better, and this one only runs 3.9.3. I do recommend that you check out this game if you get a chance, so I'm going to leave a link to that in the description below. Okay, one last game, Battlezone. Unlike Pac-Man, this is really a good port for the Atari 2600, and I really love this game. Okay, before we wrap this up, just a reminder to stick around to the end credits to catch the outtakes from this episode. Alright, so what are my closing thoughts? Overall, for what the Flashback X is trying to accomplish, it's not a bad little console. And the retro styling is really nice, and I love the way this thing looks. It seems right at home, sitting here next to my C64 Mini and my Sega Genesis Mini. But there are shortcomings. I'm not going to rag on the games. I'm sure that there are a ton of hoops that AtGames needs to jump through to get these licensed. And since I can load pretty much whatever I want, that's not really an issue. What does bug me is the games that I can't load because it's still using a version of Stella that came out in January of 2014. There have been a ton of updates and bug fixes to the emulator, and it's under GNU General Public License, so I'm not sure why they keep sticking with the old one. Along those lines, I really hate that they dropped the SD card slot. Not only does it make loading games easier, it also makes doing firmware updates a shit ton simpler. Not everyone is comfortable or capable of going through all of these steps to update a console. And here's another thing. They went through all the trouble to make this thing look like an original Atari 2600, and they pass up a perfect chance to put an SD card slot right here where a cartridge would go. Sure, that would have added to the cost, but it would have been a super cool fan service, and I know plenty of people who have bought it just for that feature. Anyway, that's just my opinion. If you want to weigh in, drop a comment below and we can discuss. And with that being said, I guess that about wraps this one up. We hope you enjoyed this special 1-year anniversary episode. And if you did, and you'd like us to do more content like this, please make sure to subscribe to our channel, leave a comment, and hit that thumbs up button. Also, please remember, all of the profits from any ad revenue that we make from this YouTube channel goes to support charitable organizations like the Tour de Force 9/11 Memorial Bike Ride. They in turn use those funds to support the families of law enforcement officers that lose their lives in the line of duty. For a complete list of the charities that we support and how you can help, please visit our website. I've left a link to that in the description below. Well, we hope you enjoyed this video. and we'll see you next time on Operation 8-Bit. It would be fun to do a review of the Atari Flashback X. We hope you enjoyed this special 1-year anniversary episode, and if you did, what the fuck? Is that English?
You wrote it.
I apparently I was drunk. You know, people don't believe you're actually a real person. Shouldn't there be more to this video?
Nope.
No, there's more to the script.
What?